Intruder alert, intruder, the intruder must not escape.
Welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today we're going back to a time when colour was king and consoles ran on 8-bit words. A time when the latest coin-op hitting the arcade would have kids going berserk. Berzerk was released by Milton Bradley in 1983, a two-player game for ages 7 to 14 based on the popular arcade game of the same name, which was released by Stern Electronics in 1980 before getting home releases on the Atari and Vectrex in 1982. Berzerk followed a really simple premise, running around a maze shooting robots while avoiding being shot in return or being jumped on by the all-powerful bouncing emoji Evil Otto. The Atari game manual fleshed out this concept a little further, elaborating that players controlled a humanoid warrior, the last survivor of a group of humans who set out to explore the planet Mazon. By the time they discovered that the planet was uninhabitable, it was too late, their spaceship having been destroyed by the automazons that stopped them relentlessly, led by their mad and merciless creator, Evil Otto. Berzerk was renowned for two main reasons. Firstly, it was one of the first games to utilise speech synthesis, costing an estimated $1,000 for each of the robot's 30 spoken words.
The humanoid must not escape.
And secondly, it was linked to the death of Peter Bogowski, who died of a heart attack brought on by exertion while playing Berzerk in April 1982, an incident which spawned a series of dark urban myths which claimed the game was responsible for killing several players. Perhaps not the kind of publicity you want for your newly released board game. Centred around the arcade game's basic concept, the board game reproduces a lot of the gameplay from the coin-op, with one player moving the humanoid warrior through a maze while shooting as many robots as they can to gain points before their inevitable death, and the other player taking control of the automated army, manoeuvring their robotic minions, including the indestructible Evil Otto, to try to kill the humanoid. Being asymmetrical in nature, players swap roles throughout, with a player with the highest score at the end of 3 ever more challenging rounds being declared the winner. Now, as far as box art goes, MB really let us down here in the UK with this bland depiction showing a photograph of the game setup with close-ups of gameplay features down the right-hand side. Compare that to MB's US release the same year and the difference is night and day. Just take a moment to revel in that glorious artwork. The 50s inspired skin-tight bodysuit and ray gun, the luminous streaking laser bolts, the Battle Galactica Cylon inspired robots that have leaped straight from the sides of the arcade cabinet, and that stunning depiction of a rippling muscled Terminator-headed beefcake, the first humanoid depiction of Evil Otto outside of the game's bland have a nice day bouncing smiley to grace the world. I would have this artwork framed on my wall if I thought for 1 second that my wife would let me away with it. So, let's take a closer look at this game to see how it compares to the original arcade version and how the UK release compares with the US release. The game comes with 2 6-sided dice, 1 for each player, 10 blue tokens which are used to represent your lives throughout the game, 5 for each player, 6 automazon robot playing pieces, 1 Evil Otto playing piece, 1 Humanoid Warrior playing piece, and the game board which features this really nice retro artwork which wouldn't look out of place on the side of the arcade cabinet. The original arcade game version of Berzerk is said to have 64,000 different maze layouts throughout the game levels, whereas obviously this board game has only got 1. You can see the red, yellow and black lines printed on the board here represent the walls of the maze. Now this is where I think it would have been really nice if, like MB's other arcade game Zaxxon, they used 3-dimensional plastic pieces for the walls. That way players could place the walls wherever they wanted on a blank board and make up their own maze, which could be different each time that they played it. To set up the game, Evil Otto is placed onto his home space here. Now it's worth mentioning that the UK edition has got this nice shaped cutout around the Evil Otto decal or sticker, whereas the US version has just got a fairly plain rectangular stand that the sticker is applied to. The humanoid warrior gets placed onto his starting space here. Of course, he would be facing the other way to face Evil Otto. He's got a mechanism here so that when you press down on the back of his arm, it flicks up in order to shoot those robots. Now this is a completely different mechanism from the one on the US release. The US release has got the Humanoid Warrior on a plain rectangular stand, and instead of having only one gun arm which flips up diagonally upwards, it's got two arms with slots below either shoulder, so that when you press down on the mechanism on the back, both arms pop up at the same time, so he shoots with two arms and two hands rather than just one. The automaton robots get placed onto each of the 6 star spaces shown on the board. Again, the US release is slightly different, with the robots being on a black background on plain rectangular plastic stands. And each player is given 5 life tokens and a dice. The US version differs in that it only comes with a total of 6 life tokens, so each player only gets 3 lives. So the US version is actually much harder than the British version. The Humanoid Warrior player begins each round, so they roll the dice and then move that many spaces. Now they can move in any direction they want except for diagonally, and they can change direction at any point during their move as long as they don't go back over spaces that they've already travelled across. In order to kill a robot, I just need to land in a space next to him. There's no point me landing here because I can't shoot through a wall. I also can't shoot a robot diagonally. So with my roll of a 4, I would probably go 1, 2, 3, 4, and from here, pew, I can shoot him. And of course it is absolutely mandatory that you make a noise. Well, it's not really, but you're going to find yourself making shooting noises all the time. With that robot dead, that gains me 10 points and I've eliminated a threat. Once the Humanoid Warrior players had their go, then it then turns over to the Evil Otto player. Now the Humanoid Warrior players got it fairly easy because they just need to roll the dice and then move that many spaces, whereas the Evil Otto player has to roll the dice and then split that between some of its pieces depending on how many of them are left on the board. So until 2 of their robots have been killed, they need to roll the dice and then split that between 2 robots. So with a 4, I could go 1, 2, 3, moving around the walls because I can't move through them, and I've got to split that, so I might go 4 there as well. As soon as the Humanoid Warrior character has killed 2 robots, then Evil Otto starts coming into play. With the introduction of Evil Otto after 2 robot deaths, things get a lot more difficult because Evil Otto is indestructible. You can't shoot and kill him. And not only that, he can move through walls, just like in the original arcade game. He is not without his limitations though. He cannot move through this square in the middle, and he can only move in straight lines, unlike the robots which can move and change direction throughout their move. Evil Otto can only go in straight lines, but he can also go diagonally, whereas the robots can't. Thing is, even though you've now got this far more powerful playing piece, you're still going to have to roll the dice and split it. In the first round, whatever you roll has to be split between Evil Otto and 2 robots. So with a roll of a 4, Evil Otto is only going to be able to move a maximum of 2 spaces, because the other 2 are going to have to be split between 2 robots. If I only rolled a 2, I would have to move Evil Otto 1 space and a robot 1 space. If I rolled a 1, I would have to only move Evil Otto 1 space. As a Humanoid Warrior, you can eliminate as many robots as you can within your turn. So for example, it could go 1, 2, kill that one, 3, kill that one, and then 4. Once you've eliminated 4 robots and there's only 2 robots and Evil Otto left on the board, you can choose to either go after these guys and get more points, or to try and land on the exit space in order to escape with your life. Now there are 6 of these robots and each one is worth 10 points for a maximum of 60 points, but if you get all 6 of them, you get an extra 60 point bonus, giving you 120 points. So it really is worth going after all of the robots if you can. As a Humanoid Warrior player, you're going to have to hope that the robot player does not get a high roll, because normally you're not in too much trouble with it being split, but with a high roll, you are going to be in trouble. With a 6, I could be going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and with that, landing on the same space as the Humanoid Warrior character, he is dead and out of the game. However, it's not for very long, because he then respawns on his starting space here, ready to continue, but he loses a life and has to give up one of his blue tokens. As soon as you lose all 5 blue tokens, then you are completely out of the game and have lost. But you've got to use those 5 tokens throughout the whole game, remembering that there are 3 rounds. As soon as the humanoid player gets to a point where they eliminate 5 of the robots and there's only 1 robot left, an Evil Otto, then the rules change again. As soon as there's only 1 robot left, as soon as this Humanoid Warrior player crosses over this diagonally striped line that goes down the middle of the board, then they are not allowed to cross it back. So at the moment, he's on the Humanoid Warrior side. As soon as he crosses this line onto the Evil Otto side of the board, he cannot cross back at any point. As soon as the humanoid player moves onto the exit, and believe me, you will find yourself making silly arcade noises all the time during this game, they are now safe. And it swaps over so that the person who is playing the Humanoid Warrior will now play as Evil Otto and the robots, and the person who was Evil Otto and the robots will now play as the Humanoid Warrior. Once both players have played as the Humanoid Warrior, they write down their scores, and that is the end of round 1. Round 2 has got exactly the same rules as the first round, but the movement of Evil Otto is slightly different. Evil Otto still doesn't come into play until 2 robots have been killed, but this time, instead of having to split the dice roll between Evil Otto and 2 robots, you only have to split the dice roll between Evil Otto and 1 robot. And once both players have played as the Humanoid Warrior in round 2 and totaled up their scores, it's then on to round 3. In round 3, the rules are exactly the same as in round 1, but if you are playing as the Evil Otto character, whenever you roll the dice this time, instead of having to split it between 3 pieces or 2 pieces, you only need to use that roll for 1 robot or for Evil Otto. If you happen to lose all 5 of your lives as the Humanoid Warrior, then you cannot continue to play. You will, however, continue to play as Evil Otto and the robots, but you can't continue to play as the Humanoid Warrior, and you can't get any more points. At the end of those 3 rounds, whoever has the most points is declared the winner. The original arcade game was very simple, with not much to the gameplay other than running around trying to rack up as many points as you can before you died, with no other real end goal other than getting a high score. The board game is pretty much the same. It replicates the arcade game really nicely. Having those ever more increasingly difficult rounds in the board game really does help. It's great not having in the later rounds to split your roll between Evil Otto and 2 robots, or 1 robot, or any robot, because you can then obviously move Evil Otto a lot further, and you can do a lot more damage to the Humanoid Warrior player with him when you can do that. So it really is nice that he gets more powerful. There's a lot of tactics which come into this game. It really is more like an abstract strategy game like chess, for instance, but with an arcade skin to it. And I really do like that use of strategy in this game. If you are the Humanoid Warrior character, obviously you're trying to kill as many robots as you can, but when you're moving your piece, you've got to think about what that die roll is in order to move your piece as close to the robots as you can get them, but not being so close so that on their turn, they're going to be able to kill you. And again, if you're the robot, the Evil Otto's army player, you've got to think, do you want to try and swarm him with all of your robots and Evil Otto at the same time? Or are you going to keep some of them back in order to guard that escape route to be able to keep them in reserve for later? Because you don't want to bunch them too close together, because if they're too close together, that Humanoid Warrior player is going to be able to wipe them all out in one go if they get a particularly good roll. As I said, there's not really much to this game, but because the rules keep changing all the time, you will find yourself, at least for the first couple of plays, having to constantly refer back to the rule book, because you can do different things, or you have to do different things, depending on how many robots are still on the board. So you're going to have to keep referring back to that and go, oh, I've killed another robot, let's have a look. Now what do we have to do? How does that change things? So it's a little bit annoying having to keep doing that and having to keep changing it, but once you've managed to get those rules in your head, it really does help the gameplay, and it does change things up more, and it makes it more interesting. It's not going to be one that's going to be easy to teach to young children though, or have them play by themselves without you constantly having to tell them what the rules now are in the game. The only real gimmick in this game is the shooting from the Humanoid Warrior. Now, yes, it does look a bit awkward with the arm being across and flipping up, but it is really, really effective. There is something really, really fun about making zapping laser sounds as you knock a robot flying across the board. It's definitely a recommendation from me. Well, until next time, where we'll have more vintage board games for you to check out, this has been Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.
Kick and fight like a robot.